Welcome back to this already the final segment of today's Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Rex Solomon, he's a regular on the Price of Business. Love the stuff you've been doing, like your articles. Looking forward to more of those. Love having you as a part of the program. Rex Solomon is with Houston Jewelry. That company is just such a huge mainstay in the Houston economy and has been now for years. But also incredibly astute to what's happening in the markets, in the business environment, and those type of things out there. And so that's why we like to get him on the program. Rex, why don't you start off by reminding the listener what Houston Jewelry is all about, a little bit of his story.
We're a full-service jewelry and fine gift store. We have everything from your basic sterling silver, little jewelry gifts up to $100,000 diamond necklaces, and we can make anything that you can think of. And we sell fine timepieces and fine giftware.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have been doing this for how long?
We started specializing in jewelry in 1953. Our first family store was in downtown in 1866. Wow. So one of the oldest family businesses in Texas.
That's fantastic. And certainly probably even more so in Houston as far as that distinction. Talk a little bit about what you see happening in the economic front. You know, back in the day when I was a kid, it seemed like Thanksgiving, Christmas didn't really show up until about the week of Thanksgiving. We began talking about Christmas, usually Halloween Eve. You know, the day after Halloween Eve, we start having the displays out and the goods out and the whole 9 yards. And so what's your sense about Christmas 2015?
Well, it's interesting. Some of the higher-end retail centers started decorating in October. We started in October, but we're full up on November 1. The kickoff to our holiday season is actually next Thursday evening when we have our annual holiday party and trunk show from 6 to 9 p.m., and we bring in a top designer and invite our clients to come in and just get a preview for the season, and everybody's welcome.
Yep. Now talk a little bit about it on a macro level, you know, economically, what's happening in the economic front, your sense about consumer demand for the holidays in 2015.
Interestingly, this year has been an okay year. It's been tracking very well with last year, which is not what I expected. I did notice a uptick starting November 1, and it coincides with weather, honestly. When it starts to get a little bit cool and overcast and rainy, and we don't have San Diego weather, people shop.
Trying to feel better, right?
No, it's just there's nothing else to do. When in October, when it's so beautiful outside in Houston, it's so rare. To the rest of the year, people really don't shop. They go outside and enjoy the festivals and things.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about what's happening out there on the precious metal front. I noticed that gold is actually continuing to decline, not significantly, but you know, it only seems to be going south in general. A little upbeat, in the last day or so. What is your sense of what's happening with
the market
metals?
Is pricing in an anticipated rate hike by the Fed in December or in January. So if the Fed does raise interest rates, which it remains to be seen, then that will make the dollar stronger, and conversely, commodities will go down. The only way that the Fed would raise interest rates is if the economy is, in fact, growing. And there's a lot of things to suggest out there that the unemployment rate really is not as low as has been reported, and the economy is not nearly as strong as the administration has projected it to be.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, the reality is that there's 90 million people unemployed, most of whom historically would have been employed in different economies. It's if we were looking at the numbers from a Great Depression perspective, the reality is that if we use the same standards for unemployment as they did in the 1930s, it'd be probably around 15%.
Right. And
that's scary.
And that runs contrary to the entire narrative that the administration and the Democratic Party has been putting out, is how well they've managed the economy the past 7 years. And I don't think that the facts are going to play that out.
Mm-hmm.
But we're in an election year, so all of those things are into play. As far as it affects the holiday season, I think that it's going to be an okay holiday season in Houston. I think that while upstream producers in the oil industry, there's been definite hits, the downstream producers, the refining, which is we're known for refining, is booming right now. Mm-hmm. So all of the companies which are supplying the refiners, et cetera, because their feedstock is so inexpensive, it is just they're growing left and right. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's been, if anything, a balanced effect for the local economy. Permian Basin, elsewhere, not so much unless you're a royalty owner, and it really doesn't matter because that's mailbox money to you.
Right. Right, because they're going to be reluctant to pull out entirely until they, and they're under lease agreements anyway.
Right.
But they'll be reluctant to pull out entirely because that would just leave room for someone else to move in when things get up again.
Exactly, because everybody knows, okay, there is oil on this piece of land right here, and if you're not keeping that lease productive, then you're going to lose it, and somebody else is just going to come in, and you've already paid for the exploration. They know exactly where to drill.
What's your sense of the energy industry going into 2016? What's your thoughts about it?
I think we're going to see a lot more of what we've had in this middle 40s, 50s price range until the Saudis decide that they're tired of bankrolling this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's coming out of their pocket.
Right.
And once their cash reserves go down, because they're just not going to continue. How long that's going to be, who knows?
Yes, yeah. And
they're financing a couple of wars right now. I mean, they're financing the fight in Syria. They're financing the fight in Yemen, plus other places, and it's expensive. So
I wonder how much of this is playing a role in, how much of trying to keep ISIS poorer is playing a role in Saudi's decision-making? Because they depend so much on energy, obviously, too.
I'm sure it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But it's a bigger thing than just ISIS. I mean, it's a head-to-head fight with Iran.
Yes.
And that's hopefully it doesn't go any further than just a monetary fight.
Yeah.
Because that would get ugly really fast.
Mm-hmm. So I know you work a lot with people in business. You're very involved in business yourself, have been for a long time. What's the sense of the attitude of people about going into 2016 being an election year? What do you think in terms of prospects for the Democrats on a national level, the Republicans, not only in getting the White House, but keeping the Congress? What's your sense of those?
Well, the House is unlikely to switch sides.
Yeah. Virtually, in fact, statistically, virtually impossible, actually.
Right. The Senate is likely to switch just because of which seats are open right now.
It's almost a 2-to-1 advantage for the Democrats.
Exactly. You would think that the Democrats have an edge in the presidential election, but if the choice is between Hillary and Bernie, there's going to be a lot of people who just are going to have issues with Hillary. Mm-hmm. Because they really don't know where she really stands, and that's an issue. She's obviously very competent in being in 3 different branches of government for the past 24 years or so. But there's that credibility issue. Bernie Sanders, unquestionably a brilliant man. I have a friend who took his class at UVM, thought he was an amazing professor. Will his policies work? Absolutely not.
No.
They'll bankrupt the country.
A country that's already bankrupt.
And beyond, we're bankrupt to the point where nobody will take us seriously.
Right.
I mean, now people still want our dollars. Then it'll be like Zimbabwe dollars.
Yeah.
The Republican
then
field,
all that precious metal you got will finally begin to pay off.
Right. On the Republican field, the method in which they've done the debates has really made it into more of a reality show, which has hurt the party. Once that gets serious in January, and there's some serious candidates, I think that it will make a clear choice.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, and I think it would be. It's really needing pruning. That GOP field needs some pruning still.
The GOP is going to need to have a candidate who is going to be able to work with the other side in a divided Congress, and that will then ensure reelection and probably winning back the Senate should the Senate be lost. But if it's a confrontational candidate who cannot work with the other side, it's just going to be stalemate.
Okay, that's interesting to see. Interesting to see how that all pans out. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of investment talk. I know you talk to a lot of people who are interested in various types of investments. You are very savvy in that area yourself. What are you hearing when it comes to that?
Well, in investment, it's always best to go contrary. So if wherever there's an area that is everybody's saying it's down, that's generally a good place to look.
That means there's a sell.
Right. So different oil properties, different real estate might be an issue when there's a correction in that market. Whenever there's a correction, it's the time to look. I don't know whether there's been a correction in the gold or silver markets. I find it interesting where the relationship between platinum and gold. There has been historically gold has been higher than platinum, and we've been having an inversion for a while where platinum is less than gold. That means that one is undervalued or one is way overvalued. What that is, I don't know. But platinum is tied to industrial production in automobiles, so because it's critical for catalytic converters.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's always good talking to you. Always interesting to get the news and what's happening out there. By the way, you've got the coolest British royalty exhibit at any store I've ever seen there at Houston Jewelry. I love that. And sometimes, I'm an Anglophile big time. My mom is from England, and so I certainly have a connection there.
It's the only place to see an actual life-size replica of the crown jewels.
Gotta love that. Absolutely. And let me say, I saw the actual crown jewels in London, and so it was interesting to see that. It's like, wow, it's really quite amazing.
In London, you wait like 4 hours to get on the conveyor belt, and it whips you by in like 3 seconds.
I know. It's like, what was that?
This way, you can actually take a look at it.
I went back in the 70s, so they gave us a little more time to that, but it was certainly like, move along.
Yes.
And I think they get a little nervous if anyone watches too long. Anyway, HoustonJewelry.com. That's HoustonJewelry.com. Rex Solomon, our guest. Final thoughts before I let you go.
It's going to be a great Christmas season coming in and celebrate at Houston Jewelry.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
Come see us next week at our holiday trunk show.
Yeah, I look forward to being there and look forward to meeting some of your fine people over there.
Sure.
All right. When we come back, we're going to have much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there. And we'll be with you tomorrow with more great programming on The Price of Business.